Hello, everyone, and inside today's episode of Locked On Canadiens, the Habs are taking on the Winnipeg Jets on Tuesday night. Can they overcome their injuries to Juraj Slafkovsky and Jake Evans and Caden Goalie and everyone else to potentially steal a game from the Jets? Or are they going to make a trade with some other teams getting desperate closer to the trade deadline? And Alex Nedeljkovic cleared waivers, and Habs fans want to know, was he the right choice to pick up on waivers or in a trade? We're going to discuss that and more inside today's show.
Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 766 of Locked On Canadiens. As always, thank you for making us your first listen every day. If you're listening to us wherever you get your podcasts, if you're watching us on YouTube, thank you for subscribing. Make sure you ring the bell, please, to get notified every time we post a new episode or go live, anything like that. I am one of your hosts. I am Scott Matlin. I'm joined, as always, by the active stick, Laura Saba. And Laura, it is that time again. The Canadiens welcome the coward Mark Scheifele to the Bell Center as the Canadiens take on the Jets on Tuesday night. What are the vibes? How are we feeling right now?
Well, I don't advocate violence as a general rule. I'm not advocating violence right now. But if Mark Scheifele were to get maybe extremely checked throughout the game, I would not be upset about that. Just finish your checks, Habs.
It is very funny is that it's like I probably have kept the coward Mark Scheifele thing running a little bit longer than its lifespan, but people seem to continue to respond to it. And I'm going to spring this on Laura because I know she hasn't looked at the standings before we sat down to record this. Laura, in the Western Conference, where do you think the Winnipeg Jets rank overall?
It's got to be like towards the bottom, right?
No, they're the first place team in the Western Conference.
What?
Yeah, you would never know it from talking to some Jets fans who I assumed they were like fourth or fifth in their division, just kind of going along with it.
Yeah.
They are currently, as of the time of this recording, in first place in the Western Conference through 44 games played. They have 59 points and a plus 33 goal differential, 8-2 in their last 10 games.
How bad is the Western Conference if this is what's going on?
It's surprisingly not bad. It's not great, but it's not as terrible. Like the Pacific's mostly garbage, and JD, we love you, but sorry. It's very top heavy. There's a very clear divide between everything. And Winnipeg is at the top end of that. Rick Bowness has done a really good job getting that team in order. And I don't know if it was just getting the stink of Paul Maurice off of them or not, but the Jets have become a pretty solid team this year, all things considered. And that was with, last year, Blake Wheeler got stripped of the captaincy. They played most of this year without Cole Perfetti and Nikolai Ehlers. Like, they've overcome that, and they've managed to keep pace and play well. And obviously, Connor Hellebuck is a big part of that. And going into this game, it's a tough sell for the Canadiens now because Jake Evans did not play Sunday after leaving Saturday's game against the Islanders. His status is currently uncertain. And Juraj Slafkovsky left early against the Rangers. His status is uncertain. I don't love the feeling going into this game. And I know the Canadiens have struggled mightily against the Jets since that sweep. But this feels like a lot of badness that could happen in this game potentially.
I don't like the Jets. I have a really hard time. Like, I don't even hate them in the way that I hate Bruins games, right? Like, I hate the Bruins. I find a really hard time actually getting excited about this game. And so obviously when the Canadiens swept them in the what was it? The Western Conference Finals, inexplicably. I personally thought that was I think the last time that I had fun watching the Jets. And then before that, it was like when Lars Eller like scored 4 goals against them or whatever it was. Like it was like ridiculous. Like I have a really hard time getting excited about Jets games. And until now, like I've had a really hard time. I think it's because they have this reputation of just being like an extremely defensive team. And obviously, as they struggled, and this is the thing, it's like, what an indictment of Paul Maurice. You know what I mean? Like, we've all known that Rick Bowness is a good coach. Like the reason that he was no longer in Dallas was not due to his coaching. And we knew that. And so I think for me, like watching Paul Maurice go and like destroy Florida when they had a perfectly good coach right there, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just like it's such an indictment, and he's one of the longest tenured coaches. When I mean tenured, I mean I guess he's one of the
He's got 4 decades worth of experience in the NHL, which is a wild, wild statement to think about.
right. It's incredibly long. Like he has coached so many games. So I find that it's like it's so clear to me, and so like when teams kind of hesitate to bring in new coaching, it baffles me, and this is just kinda like an indictment of him, but in terms of, like, what are the vibes going into the game, I honestly would not have guessed it, but then you look at the Western Conference, and it's a mess, it's a mess, like, the Jets have a good coach, great goalie, and great conference that they're playing in. So I think, I was shocked at the beginning, but when you start thinking about it, and so I think this is a big task for the Montreal Canadiens because you're going into a game where now you know that it's a good team with a good coach. You know that it's somebody who's experienced, and you know that it's a team that other than that year, you generally tend to struggle with the Jets, right? It's not one of my favorite opponents to play. So it's a huge, huge test. And now to have to do it without some of their key players, like, for me, I think it's important, and I know we're gonna discuss this, in the next segment, but it's important to call up the right players in this scenario.
And that's the thing is that, there are some options for the Canadians here, whether through the trade market claims or calling someone up. There are options. It's not as deep as we would hope at this point based on injuries and other things. But going into this game, Samuel Montembeault is likely going to have to stand on his head. And I am very much assuming that Samuel Montembeault is starting this game because why not? Uh, I think he's going to have to stand on his head unless the Canadians can, be not proactive. I'm opportunistic in their chances in this game. And it's the Jets. They can score goals in bunches, and we've seen that before. I'm just hoping the Canadians bring that effort they brought against the Rangers. You might lose, but put the effort in, and I'm not going to be worried about it. Don't come out like you did against the Kraken and lay down and just get run over here. And speaking of the options that the Canadians can do to bring up bodies, trade for bodies, everything, we're going to discuss that all coming up in our next segment. But first, betonline.net is your number one source for all your betting info, new lines, new odds, new props, parlays, whatever. BetOnline has you covered. Obviously, the NFL playoffs are happening right now. It's been a wild, wild weekend. The NHL season is coming up on the All-Star break. Baseball is not that far off. NBA and NCAA basketball are going around right now too. And with BetOnline, you can bet on things like boxing, MMA, golf, and so many other things. And if you love sports podcasts, and we know you do because you are listening to us here at Locked On Canadiens, they have sports podcasts for you as well. So head to their website today or use your mobile device to learn more. And remember, BetOnline, it's where the game starts. We are back here at Locked On Canadiens, and as of right now, when we're recording this Monday at 7:35 p.m. Eastern Time, we do not know what the status of Jake Evans and Juraj Slafkovsky for the upcoming game against the Winnipeg Jets is. We do not know if they're both going to be cleared, if they were just precautionary reasons or what. What we do know is we are going to advance into this segment with the thought they are not playing. And the first thing with any of this is not make a trade, not do a waiver thing. It's call somebody up from the Rocket. And they played at home on Saturday afternoon against the Cleveland Monsters. Alex Belzile had a hat trick. Anthony Richard obviously played well. Rem Pitlick played well. And if I'm looking at this, there are two names that I think are definitely very key or might be their options for a call-up. One is Rem Pitlick because it makes the most sense. He's got NHL minutes. He's played really well for the Rocket in those regards. Can put him in the bottom six, and it's not really an issue. and the other is Raphael Harvey Pinard. Because beyond that, the Rocket are thin at actual offensive producing prospects. And I'd like to see Harvey Pinard get a shot here, especially against the Jets. I think his feistiness, we talked about it with Michael Pezzetta last year, is something that'll help spark this team a little bit. Only he's got a little more finish and polish to his game than Pezzetta does. And based on how well Jesse Ylönen has played in the NHL so far, you might as well see what else these AHL guys can do. And Laura, I don't know if I'm just kind of going off base because that's what I want to see or not.
No, I think for me, Rem Pitlick has always been one of those, the safe first call up. So in the absence of, let's say, somebody like Anthony Richard or Jesse Ylönen, like deserving a spot and grabbing a spot, to me, like the first option is always going to be somebody like Rem Pitlick, because I think, he proved last year that he's pretty versatile. I think last year he kind of overperformed his ability, but he's still extremely useful. He's very versatile. And I think it's also partly because the Canadiens didn't really have that many options when they were playing him where they were playing him at the beginning of this season. But I think that, I feel like he's the kind of guy that you can kind of like fill up a lineup with, and he's not going to let you down too badly. I know earlier this season you look at his stats and they're not that great, but you look all throughout last season after he was claimed and his stats were amazing. Like his underlying numbers were good. The way that he was performing was good. Yes, his shooting percentage was way above his general average ability, but I find that, don't put him out there in extremely defensive situations. That's not what he's there for. He's there to kind of provide energy, to provide a little bit of like shooting, if not scoring. So it makes sense to me. You're not off base at all.
And I look at it this way too, is that as the teams get closer and closer to the trade deadline, teams who are operating under LTIR right now, options are there for Kent Hughes to take advantage of another team's desperation a little bit. And a name I saw earlier, and this is one that I'm interested in because we've brought them up before on this podcast, is that Evander Kane is set to be activated off of long-term injury reserve for the Edmonton Oilers, and they're going to need to get under the cap. And to do that, they got to waive, I believe, one of, and if I remember the tweet, Warren Fogle, Jesse Puljujarvi, Derek Ryan, or Devin Shore at this point. And if they waive Jesse Puljujarvi, one, you got to hope that no one else puts in a claim there because of his $3 million cap hit. But if the Oilers are that desperate to move on from him now that Evander Kane is back, we've talked about how he's the ideal bounce back candidate in another market. And I'm just imagining Kirby Dach and Jesse Puljujarvi kind of being those very high draft picks who get traded out of a previously bad situation and thrive. But I'm also wondering if a guy like Warren Fogle, who makes 2.75 this year and next year, would make sense for the Canadiens. He can play both wings. Let me take a look at his numbers here. He's got 8 points in 32 games this year. He had 26 and 82 last year. He's very clearly a bottom six forward. But if that gives you a solid option instead of playing Ylönen or Slafkovsky 7, 8, 9 minutes a night, you take it. I'm really curious what they do, especially if these are longer-term injuries, and we will talk about goaltending and longer-term injuries in our next segment. But if Slafkovsky or Evans are out long-term, you eventually, one, you got to get a center, because Jake Evans being that key middle six, bottom six center and not having him as a problem. With Slafkovsky, I'm more willing for them to try something out there and, take a risk. With Jake Evans out, you got to find somebody. And I do wonder if we've seen way too many links to the Oilers in recent weeks, dating back to basically the start of the year, whether it be Josh Anderson or Joel Edmondson. There's too much smoke for there to not be a fire burning somewhere in Alberta. So I'm very curious if there is something to happen there with the Oilers desperate to get Evander Kane back into their lineup now.
First of all, what are the Oilers doing ever? That's my first question. My next question is, why so desperate to move on from Jesse Puljujarvi? And I know, like, there's lots of people in our market too that aren't too impressed with him, but I think you put him in Montreal, or you put him anywhere, really, anywhere other than the Oilers. I think, who else is that dysfunctional?
The Canucks,
The Canucks.
the Edmonton Canucks, the Vancouver Canucks, who said today, we're not doing a rebuild, we'll do a retool. Well, in the middle of doing a retool, which, oh boy, if we were to dive into the Vancouver Canucks, we'd need several episodes to unpack all of that. But there are desperate teams out there.
No, but like if you put Puljujarvi on a functioning team, I think that he can bounce back. I think he can be a useful player. And I think that all those naysayers that don't want Puljujarvi, like, will be proven wrong. I have that faith, right? And we talked about it. I don't think he's necessarily going to be as good as Kirby Dach or work out as well as Kirby Dach, but like, can't be worse than in Edmonton where he's being played on the fourth line and he's not a fourth line player. I think it's worth it to kind of give him a call, see what's up. And if he gets put on waivers, I mean, the Oilers are giving away somebody for free that might end up burning them in the playoffs or in, like, it just doesn't make sense to me for them to put him on waivers. But also I think what you're thinking about is on track, but at the same time, I wonder what the Oilers are really thinking. Like, their decisions don't tend to make sense to me in general. Like, the only decision that I've agreed with in a while is them getting Brett Kulak.
And here's the thing too, is that I want the Canadiens to acquire Jesse Puljujarvi, but as we're going to discuss in our next segment too, they got to move cash out to make that happen. They currently don't have the cap space available to make this trade happen. They've got to shift one of those bigger contracts out. And if they could do that, outstanding. But this is not I think they're going to do it just because they have the ability to do so. They don't have the cap space to just snap their fingers and trade for Jesse Puljujarvi. They got to move money out, which if the Oilers are truly desperate, you go ahead and do that. I can't help but thinking something is brewing here just a little bit under the surface, and it's going to come out of nowhere like they often do with the Montreal Canadiens. I don't know if it's going to be Puljujarvi. I don't know if it's going to be someone less exciting like a Warren Fogle or someone else, but I can see them making a trade here just to kind of bolster the injuries here, especially if they don't get good news who's on Slafkovsky's injury or Evans' injury. They're going to make a move at some point because besides Harvey Pinard in the AHL, there's Pitlick, there's Anthony Richard, Mitchell Stevens, Alex Belzile, and Lucas Condata. Everyone else, I'm pretty sure, is on an AHL deal, and they're not going to upgrade those midseason contract spots are important. And the defense is still a couple weeks away from getting back to full strength as well. Injuries have taken a toll. It's not as straightforward as we might think. And speaking of moving money, moving in and out of the Canadiens organization, Alex Nedeljkovic was on waivers Sunday into Monday. We mentioned it briefly, but now we're going to kind of dive into whether or not the Canadiens, now that he's cleared waivers, should trade for him anyways, and that's all coming up next. But first, today's show is also brought to you by our friends at Athletic Greens. And Athletic Greens is a product I use every morning to help get my day started on the right foot. It's got 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to get your day off to the right start. It's lifestyle-friendly if you are vegan, if you're dairy-free or gluten-free. Less than 1 gram of sugar, no GMOs, no nasty chemicals, artificial anything, and it still tastes great. It's super inexpensive. It's less than $3 a day, cheaper than paying for cold brew for that energy every morning. And when you subscribe and order Athletic Greens, you get a year's supply of vitamin D with your order, which is so important in those cold, dark winter months like we're going through right now. So if you want to be like myself and you want to arm your body and reclaim your health and your immune system, all you need is Athletic Greens with convenient daily nutrition. It's just 1 scoop in a cup of water every morning, and that's it. No need for a million different pills, supplements, or anything to look out for your health. And to make it even easier, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NHL Network. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/NHL Network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. All right, we are back here at Locked On Canadiens, and there was a big thing. There was a lot of discussion going around Twitter for around the Habs spheres that Sunday, the Detroit Red Wings placed goaltender Alex Nedeljkovic on waivers with the purpose of sending him to the Grand Rapids Griffins of the AHL. And as of today, he did clear those waivers. And the whole thing here is he went from super promising prospect when he was with the Carolina Hurricanes not long ago. Hurricanes gave him a, I believe, 2-year contract worth $3 million a year, or 3 years at $3.5 million, and then promptly traded him to Detroit, where he has put up a 901 and an 880 save percentage. He was 20, 24, and 9 his first year in Detroit, and then 2, 4, and 2 this season. He's had some injuries. In his NHL career, Nedeljkovic has a record of 39, 35, and 15, 298 save percentage, 906. And in the AHL, he's 92, 47, and 16 with a 905 save percentage. And I looked at this and I immediately said no, but I also don't know the extent to which Jake Allen is injured. And since I assume it's not serious, my answer is still going to be a no on this, because I don't really understand why, unless they truly don't trust Caden Primo in the NHL at all this season.
Well, that's the thing. It's not like he's promising, really. I think Nedeljkovic is a fantastic cautionary tale. And that's something that I worry about with goaltenders a lot. There's always goalies that have like a season or even 2 seasons of showing major promise and then they fall off a cliff. Consistency is really, really hard with goaltending. And I would like, instead of trading for someone, like if they claimed him off waivers, that's one thing. But instead of like trading for someone, I would rather they try and grow from within the organization, because there aren't that many actually consistently good goaltenders in the league. There's a lot of average goaltending, but there aren't any that are like you can be confident in. And the ones that are like, their team's not going to trade them away, right? You're not going to get the player. So like there's so many goalies that have like a great season or a great playoffs or something like that. And then you just kind of fall off a cliff. So to me, if you're talking about like getting the future goaltender of the Habs, obviously Nedeljkovic is not part of that conversation. That's not what anybody in this market is saying. They're just saying, should they get him instead of Caden Primo? I would love for Caden Primo to be playing in the AHL. I think that's where he excels. I don't think that, he hasn't done anything, and I know he's been injured. He hasn't done anything to prove that he belongs in the NHL. The Canadiens clearly don't believe it either, because they're not playing him. They're playing Samuel Montembeault on back-to-backs. So like, if only to give Samuel Montembeault a rest, get another goaltender. But like, if you aren't claiming this guy off waivers, then you probably know that Jake Allen's coming back pretty soon.
And here's the thing. Caden Primo is 23 years old. Alex Nedeljkovic is 27. Like, I'm not saying, oh, his career's over and done with. He just turned 27, but at a certain point, this is what they are. And I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on the Detroit Red Wings. You can tune into Locked On Red Wings to get Scotty's opinion on that, because they know a lot more than we do.
Scotty.
But Caden Primo has very similar patterns between the two leagues, is 4 years younger, is currently signed for another 2 years on top of this one, and is your own homegrown prospect. If Jake Allen is out long-term and you're just kind of saying, we're just going to ride out the rest of the season, okay, I can kind of understand it a little bit. They brought Samuel Montembeault back and made him a viable NHL goaltender again. But I don't see the need to do this right now unless they truly don't want to trust Caden Primo, or they don't think Jake Allen's injury is that serious, which we don't know. I wonder if they're just kind of riding it out to the All-Star break here, and then everyone recuperates. Jake Allen comes back, and we talked about this the other day, is give Jake Allen a break. But honestly, like, I don't see the need for it. I understand the thought behind it is this team isn't going to need help losing games, all things considered here. And Caden Primo's profile as an NHL and AHL goaltender is very similar. Admittedly, when he went 1-7-1 last year with the Canadiens, they were terrible. Thank you, Dom. And he hasn't been great with the Rocket this year, but he's also been dealing with an injury that knocked him out for nearly a month. It's very hard to get consistency and rhythm there. And unless Samuel Montembeault goes down, where they have to then sign another goalie because they do not have another goalie on an NHL contract at this point. I'm just not in favor of it right now. I'd rather them stick in-house with goaltending because it's going to become a market inefficiency very soon. People are going to be looking for the goaltenders, and I'd rather Canadians pay a premium when they're trying to collect assets right now. If there's bad news, yes, but as of right now, to quote everyone on Shark Tank, I'm out. No thank you on this. Him going to the AHL, though, and already being able to be assigned directly to the Rocket, admittedly probably does make him more appealing to a team like the Canadiens, who now have their AHL rookie, Joe Verbatic, who is up from the ECHL playing behind Kevin Poulin. But overall, it doesn't make sense in the world for me.
Now I want an NHL version of Shark Tank, and I don't know what I would have. Like who would be the Sharks, and then who would be pitching, and then what kind of products. I want an NH. Okay, mailbag listeners, please come up with a concept for us, and then we will do it as one of our extras.
Yes, I mean Mark Cuban can just be who's the most like over the top owner now. That's always in. He can be Francisco. There we go. Way too over involved. Way too public. Doesn't know when to shut up. Perfect. We're done. We're already a part of the way there. So we will take suggestions for that in our mailbag. We will be back with you all after the game against the Jets on Tuesday night, where we will hopefully be talking about another Canadiens effort and everything else happening around the NHL and everything that would have followed up with that. Remember, you can follow us on Twitter at @LO_Canadiens, or you can follow Laura at The Active Stick. Follow myself at Scott Matley. You can email us at Locked On Canadian. When you're done checking us out, please check out Locked On NHL Prospects. Hattie has all the info you need in case your team is as bad as our team and you want draft info. Folks, we will see you all next time.